Welcome to another edition of Grace Under Pressure, where my guest is a good friend and colleague of mine, David Nour. And please know he prefers to be called Nour, so I will be calling him that. But LinkedIn Live, as listeners know, or viewers know, we pose questions to thought leaders and doers like Nour, whose ideas and actions are helping us come to a greater understanding of ourselves and the opportunities that await us. Grace Under Pressure reveals what's too often dismissed as the soft stuff, the caring, the connecting, commitment we feel toward others. Grace for me is the generosity we show, respect we give, compassion we demonstrate. And when you do it as a leader, especially now in our challenging times, it requires an ability to act for others and energize everyone around us. Nour, welcome to Grace Under Pressure.
John, thank you for the kind invite.
Good. And folks, if you're feeling a little lethargic this afternoon or a little bit wondering where you are, tune in, because Nour is your personal energizer. I have to tell the viewers, one of the first times we met, I was very proud of myself. I was down in the gym. We were in La Jolla, California, and I was down in the gym, and I got down there at 6 a.m, and I was working out on the treadmill. And who do I see next to me but this guy doing one-handed push-ups? And I thought, give me a break, and it turned out to be Nour. And we've been friends ever since. So anyway, Nour, you are such a strategist, an insightful man. And I'm going to give you a little introduction. You're a board advisor, researcher, executive educator. You're on faculty at my son's alma mater, which is Gosueta Business School of Business. He got his MBA there, like you did. And also you teach at Vanderbilt. You're the author of 10 books, including bestsellers like Relationship Economics and Co-Create. And you have a new book coming next year called Curve Benders. And folks, if there's anybody that bends the curve, it's Nour. And interestingly enough, your background, you were born in Iran. And what impresses me is you came here as a teenager with $100 and no fluency in English. And talk about succeeding in tough times. Nour, it's a pleasure to have you. So what are you hearing? What are execs telling you about the circumstance we're in now?
So I think most executives are beyond the initial shock, right? March, April, we're just trying to figure out what does this all mean. And interestingly enough, a lot of people thought this would be a short, 60, 90-day thing, and it will pass and we'll kind of get back to normal. If you've heard that expression.
Yep.
I think most executives are beyond that notion of a beginning, middle, and an end. And now they're realizing there was before COVID, BC, and after COVID, AC. So how do we adapt if we have to live with this thing for another 12 to 18 months? I just think short of and a lot of executives I'm talking to are reinforcing, short of a bio solution, a vaccine, right? It's going to be very difficult, and people are going to be uncomfortable just getting together. So they're figuring out, and they're adapting, and that data is coming back and giving them some really strong reassurance that we can not just survive, but we can find opportunities for what I call COVID tailwind. Mm-hmm. And John, just like there's some sectors that are struggling, retail, tourism, travel, there's some sectors that actually are doing well. They're busy, and they're having one of their best years, and they're taking advantage of that opportunity.
That's great. You are someone who's the epitome. I remember we had a conversation, maybe it was in April, and the tenor of our conversation was, what pandemic? and you weren't being dismissive of the health consequences, but the going out and finding new business and helping clients, more importantly, helping clients navigate this. So crises do provoke opportunity. So how do we do it? How do we maximize this?
Yeah, so I equate this to if any of the audience members have ever been fired or laid off. Yeah, I think this analogy will resonate. I can either stew on, I had a terrible boss, or should have, could have, would have, or all the things behind me, or I can put that same energy, effort, focus, passion, conviction, energy, drive towards the next finding the next opportunity. And listen, I saw the same. You and I speak extensively. My last keynote was for Samsung in February in Dallas. And when this thing hit, very quickly I came to the realization that, listen, it might be 12 to 18 months before I'm ever back on a stage again. So instead of, hemming and hawing about could have, I immediately invested in a full video production studio at the house.
Right.
I made a list, and I highly recommend this for, and it's never too late to do this. John, I made a list of top 100 executive relationships. I started with 30, and now it's become 100. And my commitment was call 4 a day. And as you know, I call them not to sell them something. Early on, and even now, it's not really a time to sell. It's time to creatively solve problems. It's time to add value. It's time to understand where they are, what they're struggling with. So initially, it was just, listen, how you doing? And how's your business? And how's your team? And are you guys okay? Are you safe? What are you seeing? And what are you hearing? And those conversations led to some really interesting insights early on that then I was able to kind of, and what's interesting is follow-on conversations with them. You'll see they're trending. You'll see kind of that, and who's got that forward-thinking, visionary leadership, and who's still sitting on the fence.
Right. Perfectly. I love the way you reached out to all these folks and had genuine conversations with them. And I think that gets to the heart of something you call relationship economics. Tell us about that.
Sure. So again, everybody we meet, all your audience members, they genuinely understand that relationships are important. John, I don't believe enough people understand their significance. And by that, I mean, way too many people think of relationships as just haphazard, something that happens to you. Way too many people assume they have them. They don't believe they can be quantified. And we've, over 20 years, we've proven many of these myths and misperceptions wrong. So relationship economics is about how to become more intentional, how to be more strategic, and absolutely how to be more quantifiable in the relationships you choose to invest in. Cool. And like any investment, nobody's going to make that blindly. So I talk a lot about, I coach executives and their teams. Whenever you're faced with a challenge or an opportunity, we tend to often think about what should we do and how should we do it. John, we don't ask enough who questions. Who do we need? Who do we know? How do we connect the dots with value add between the relationships we need and the ones we know that can help accelerate our ability to get through this challenge or reach this new opportunity?
And that's such a powerful point. And when we talk about who we know, that connection, it also implies within a company too. So if you're the senior leader, who's on my team, or who do we need to recruit for our team? Would you agree?
Absolutely. So you're going to chuckle at this. One of my clients is up in Virginia. I'm actually this Sunday getting in my car and I'm going to drive to Virginia because I'm putting on a 2-day leadership program for them. Get this. We found a state park with one of those structures, right, that has a roof. It's open and everybody's bringing a lawn chair. I'm taking a whiteboard. They got boxed lunches coming, right? So we're going to do our 2-day leadership program. Could we do it virtually? Yes. And people are doing that all the time. But I think a lot of people are struggling with Zoom fatigue, right? Or just online fatigue. Right. So I said, what if, is there a state park or is there a place where we can gather and still be socially distant? We'll wear our masks getting there and whatnot. But the idea is adapt. And you adapt to, whatever environment you can get things done within. And a key part of the reason I bring it up is key part of the conversation is their internal relationships and how could they leverage those to accelerate a few key initiatives forward. And in the CEO's words, we want to find a way to salvage 2020.
That's great. And what I admire, not only just your sheer enthusiasm, but you're a roadmap guy. And you have a wonderful graphic called Strategy Visualization. I want to call that up for a minute. And let's do that. Okay.
Yeah. So this is you're gonna love this story. So several years ago, a CEO of about an $8 billion company, 15,000 folks, John sends me a 60-page PowerPoint on their strategy. And I called John, his name is John as well. I call him back and I say, John, I'm on slide 6 and I don't understand where we're going, what are we doing, or how we're going to get there.
Yeah, not a good sign.
Right? and he says, okay, smart guy, what do you think is the answer? I said, what if it was one page? He said, there is no way. Our business is too complex and complicated, and there's just no way. I said, humor me. I don't believe your audience needs to know everything you know. They simply want to know where we're going and how will we get there. So what if that was on one page? Make a long story short, we got a small group together, and we mapped out exactly what you and your audience are looking at. Where are we today, our current state? Where are we going? That's our future state. How can we take parts of this future vision and pilot it, prototype it, create some variation of it? And then how do we launch a journey toward that, what I call from now to next? So we said, what if we visualize that process? And then we're happy to help you roll it out. And if you can notice on number 5, the rollout, it's a little squiggly because it's seldom just smooth sailing, right? You're going to have what I call headwind, tailwind, and some turbulence.
Right.
So we've translated these projects. We've done over 100 of them. We've translated them into some 8-10 different languages. We can animate this. We can create data visualization out of this. And one of the things for you and your audience, we're finding in the post kind of COVID world, your ability as a leader to quickly capture and visually articulate your vision and a path to get there unequivocally sets you apart. So we're right now working on several of these projects for global brands, and it's really fulfilling to see executives convey just that. Here's our journey from now to next.
And I'm glad that, because that visual is very simple. And I don't mean simplistic, but it's very simple. And it's an at-a-glance look of what we need to do and how we're going to get there. And you mentioned something which I think is important. And in our world, we kind of say, what? But how many companies have you worked with that really don't have a strategy? And it's amazing.
Or you ask about their strategy and you ask 8 different people and you get 12 different answers, right? It's a classic case of not everybody's on the same page. And by the way, neuroscientists tell us that our brains process visuals 60,000 times faster than we do text.
Right.
So you could send me a 60-page PowerPoint or a 10-page document or those emails that scroll forever, or you can show me one page that articulates just that.
Great. And I think that visual is particularly important for now because we're all at sea, as you had talked about the turbulence, but in a way we're sea. You said that you're going to be working with a client that wants to get the best out of 2020. What are you thinking about 2021? What's going through you? What are you hearing about 2021?
Yeah, so there's 3 to 5 trends that I think might be useful to you and your audience. Number 1 is a massive labor shift. So all the restaurants, all the servers, all those industries, retail, tourism, travel that have been hit, and all the people that heart goes out to them that were laid off, John, that labor's got to go somewhere. Right. So a lot of my clients see an opportunity to retrain, reskill, upskill, and really invest in their talent. So that talent shift is a big one. Number 2 is what I call sector variance. There's some sectors that I started working, my luck with a fabulous airline way back in January of 2020, and we were all excited about where this airline was going and what they were doing. And unfortunately, a lot of my direct clients have taken, early retirement packages, and they've moved on because the airline has said we just don't need the capacity that we had even this fall and going into 21 that we had in January of 20. So right. Certain industries, I think it's just going to take them a little bit longer to come back. Right. The third one is really your ability to pivot your capabilities. So if your value proposition was delivered through physical proximity, and we're not going to get together anytime soon, you better figure out how to pivot those capabilities and deliver them very different ways. So I jokingly use, we've got a mobile vet that comes to our driveway. I kid you not, in one of those Sprinter vans.
Right.
They take our dogs and they sedate them on a table. They've retrofitted back of this thing as a table, and they brush their teeth and they give them their medications and they hand them back to us, and we're done, right? So in lieu of going to that vet, they're coming to us. I'm an avid motorcycle rider. I just got an email from my local motorcycle dealership. For an additional fee, they'll come pick up the bike, go repair it, and deliver it back, right? So that's an example of pivoting your capabilities or adding additional capabilities to meet the demands of customers in 2021.
You told us earlier, we had a conversation about an engineering firm that you had worked with that when they went virtual, they saw an immediate upswing in productivity. Has that been sustainable?
So great comment. Just again for your audience, they had 1,200 engineers, couple of shocks to their system. Number one, they figured out that 800 of them were using desktop computers plugged right into their network. So within 72 hours, they wiped all those clean, donated them to charity, and spent $5 million on laptops and infrastructure to really make their workforce, their engineering team, able to go work from home. I spoke with the head of engineering, about a month or so after the pandemic hit, and said, we're at 92% productivity. The highest they were ever able to sustain in the office was in the high 70s. Interestingly enough, I spoke with them about a week or so ago. Their challenge is now one of burnout, right? And the challenges you alluded to is that's just not sustainable, because these people, because they were not commuting, they were getting up early in the morning and working. Then maybe they spent some time with their kids and family during the day, and then they were coming back online and working again late into the day. That's just not possible. And for most of us, we're spending 8, 10, 12 of these Zoom and Microsoft Teams and Skype and meetings, these virtual meetings that are just draining on most of us. So interestingly enough, the engineering executive is actually mandating no more, rolling vacation time, right? If you got vacation, take it. You got to find ways to disengage. The work will be there. We got others that can cover it. But his concern is now burnout. Interestingly enough, there's some conflict that and friction that has come up because people can't interact and see each other. And he's really worried about the behavior changes necessary when they do come back into the office.
Great. That's interesting thought, because we're moving to, most thinkers are saying we're going to have a hybrid workplace. Significant number of us working from home, a significant number, or maybe a limited number, working in a physical location. That's going to be a tremendous impact on our culture. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So again, I'm in my third round of calls to my list of 100. I'm getting around about 40%, 38 to 40%. They don't believe need to come back to the office. There's types of roles that they believe they can continue to do this from home. So they're identifying what those roles are. For some of the more physical interaction roles where people have to come in, they're instituting behavior changes and they're breaking up, which is a little counterintuitive, networks. Both people to people, but also people to objects, to not become super spreaders. So no more reusable anything. Just like our hotel rooms are, after each meeting, a staff cleans the conference room completely before the next group comes in. Those kinds of things. So they're proactively changing some of those behaviors. As I said, they're biggest concerns with this idea of reopening and this hybrid workforce is really thinking through what did we used to be able to do that we'll no longer be able to do moving forward, right? So cafeteria, and they're simple things that I think we all took for granted. Cafeterias.
Sure.
How do you spread a cafeteria out that people are at least 6 feet apart? Well, that means you don't have as much, room for people to eat at the same time, right? So they're actually, for the first time, they're looking at flex hours, right? So kind of group come in at, earlier, 6, 7 in the morning, but you know what? They're gone by 1 in the afternoon. Another group comes in 10. Atlanta did this during the Olympics, those flex hours. You and I talked about our kids' school. They're talking about, certain classes come in Mondays and Wednesdays. Others come in Tuesday, Thursdays. Fridays are if you need extra help. So I think clients are going to experiment with very different formats to really figure out, how do we get creativity? How do we get that collaboration? Think of things that have become more difficult. Training, onboarding new employees have just become significantly more complex.
And that's why I think it gets back to something, I have discussions about what our new normal, and we're nowhere near our new normal yet. And what is it going to be like? And I always punt that question, but I think the one thing that will be determinant, I think the values we held in January 2020 will be the values that shape our new normal when that comes. Do you have a thought on that? No?
Absolutely. And I believe certain values, I think, are going to get amplified, right? So most leaders you and I work with unequivocally say our people are our biggest asset. Now it's not just the people, it's the livelihood of these people. So I think your empathy quotient is going to get elevated. I think your genuine care of people are going to get dramatically elevated. I've got a client that is hiring and promoting a wellness officer. And this person's job is to make sure people are okay mentally, physically, but they're also, John, I thought this was a really interesting example. They've partnered with a local health system where the health system is manning a health tent at the entrance to their parking lot. And everybody gets temperature checked, tested. Even if you have a cold, you're going back home. Yeah. And they'll make sure they stay in touch with you and how you're feeling and touch base. But they in essence, the health system is also lending them a physician, a nurse, a mental health person. So they're really amping up the health and wellness capabilities of the organization for their team.
What's powerful about that, because you use the word empathy, and that's become something of a buzzword. I hate to say that. We all say we tell our leaders, you got to show empathy and stuff like that. What you just gave me was a concrete example of empathy is not a thought. Empathy must be acted upon. And what you just talked about, that wellness officer or providing healthcare and also mental health care awareness, that's going to be such a significant aspect going forward. And leaders need to be vigilant on that. So
again, quick example. I talked to one CEO who he was in his office and he said, I'm looking out into my parking lot and there's 10 cars here. This is a corporate headquarters that usually gets about 2,000 people coming in every day. And his comment was, until we can demonstrate to our people that it's safe for them to come back, I think people are going to struggle. So they've completely eliminated their lobby, no visitors, no contractors. It has now become almost like a sanitizing. If you've ever been around a clean room, it's almost like a sanitizing clean room as you come in. They're deploying, robots, almost like those Roomba robots to clean industrial strength hallways and restrooms. They're replacing, there used to be these doors you would open to go through hallways. Those are all now motion censored. So they've heavily invested back in their infrastructure to create an environment where, again, people would genuinely feel safe, and they're moving people's desks further apart, and they've invested several months in retrofitting their headquarters. And he said, I believe less than 50% of those 2,000 people will need to come back, but they're in the manufacturing business, and we still haven't figured out how to manufacture things virtually.
No, that's true. And I think what you're getting to is something which is important, and you're the perfect person to talk about it. And it's the personal side of this. What I'm hearing, and I'm sure you're hearing it too, is that when we first went into this pandemic, we're all in this together, and we still are together, but people are getting tired. So what advice do you have about fatigue?
Yeah. So I'm going to give you 3. One, I deeply believe in this idea of digital detox. We need to disengage. You play music. I ride motorcycles. I don't know what your audience does to disengage,
Yeah.
but I also don't know anybody that can burn the candle at both ends. And since March, most of us have been burning the candle at both ends, right? One of my favorite memes. I didn't know March had 8,000 days.
That's great.
March was painful, but I think ever since then, we've been on a sprint, right? We've just kind of gone through month after month. So number one, you got to get, digital detox is really important to disengage from the devices and all that we've got around us. One. Two, getting away from work to really focus on, which builds on that digital detox, to something that brings us genuine joy. If that's golf for you, God bless you. If it's running, if it's yoga, if it's whatever it is, if it's spending time with the family, my wife loves to go antiquing, right? So it's for us, we wear masks and we go to just, again, because there's so much we can't do, you got to really invest in the things you can do. And the last one I'm going to come back to is that mental health. John, we've got to destigmatize stress and anxiety and all the pressures that are on all of us. It is not old school mindset that says that's weak. I'm teaching my kids that if you don't find someone to talk to, it could be a faith person. It could be a professional mental health, practitioner. You got to talk to somebody. Otherwise, all this becomes a volcano. And I'm not a psychologist, but I've been on meetings. I was on a meeting a couple of weeks ago where on one of these Zoom sessions, a director level blows up at a VP for something that was, I think, was just a misunderstanding. But you could tell that this woman was just under enormous amount of pressure. And we all need somebody to go talk to really get and just talk through all the anxiety. It could be financial, it could be family related, it could be death of a loved one, it could be a death of a friend. Unfortunately, today we heard that Herman Cain, the former presidential candidate and a great American, great entrepreneur here in Georgia, passed away because of COVID.
Okay.
So those losses wear on us.
No, and that's one of the things that we're sometimes the sense of loss. Of course, it's our loved ones if we lose to the disease, but there's also a sense of loss of maybe a loss of a job, a loss of a colleague, and not a death per se, but a loss of my community, loss of my connections. And that's where leaders step to the fore. And so what do you advise those who are in work responsible for the others to do to stay connected?
Yeah. So first and foremost, again, your verbal has to match your visual and your physical. So what you say online has to be aligned with what you say offline. You cannot say our people are our biggest asset and then announce massive layoffs without having done all that you can, right? So first and foremost, I'm a big believer of have we taken all the steps between pay cuts, and there's some great examples of leaders who are doing that, right? Pay cuts and asking people to take voluntary vacations or voluntary time off or whatever we can to really, conserve that cash and give us the runway. Number two, I've never seen an organization cut its way to growth. So where cut is a good defensive strategy up front, at some point, you've got to shift to an offensive strategy and look for how do we get demand back? Because that's what's going to save jobs and it's going to save people. Number three is full transparency, right? If you've done all that you can, you've got to be fully transparent of, listen, the job we hired you for, we no longer need. So now let's help you to the extent that we can to really transition to that next role, transition that next opportunity, and really amping up. This is another example of empathy, really amping up where can we and how can we help that person land in the next role without just doing superficial stuff that doesn't really add any value.
Great. Thank you. And as we're winding down the show, I always like to ask our guests about grace, a theme of our show. Do you have an example in your life or someone you admire to share with us? So
I am grateful for the friends you and I have made within the MG100 community. Chester Eldon comes to mind. You've got Molly Chang, you've got Lou Carter, a lot of Tasha Urich, Aisha Bursell. You've got some amazing people that are in this community that, again, we all need someone to talk to. So they're more than gracious in their time and their sounding board. I'm also blessed that I've built a personal board of advisors, and this is something else that I recommend to people. Think of 3 to 5 people that you don't have to impress, and you can go to them and say, here's what I'm struggling with. Here's what's going well. Here's where I need help. Here's just somebody to talk to. And if you don't have to impress them, you can be much more transparent about what you're struggling with. And I'm grateful for several CEOs, past clients, colleagues, friends from our faith, from our community that I can talk to. And I think everybody needs that. Everybody needs that sounding board to really just open up and say, here are some things that I'm struggling with.
Absolutely. And having that community around you and whatever, and they give to you and you in turn give to them or others. And that's how grace works. We're all in this together. Nour, how can people find you? So.
Easiest would be our website, just Nour, nourgroup.com. There's a blog, there's podcast, and I'm fairly active on the various social channels. Or you can just Google my name, David Nour, Nour, and you'll find all kinds of articles and videos and whatnot.
Well, thank you for joining us today. It has been a joy. We're going to close out.
John, always good to be with you.